This happened only a few months ago. I work the night shift at a logistics warehouse. I sleep during the day and stay awake all night, even on my days off, just to keep my body on the same strict schedule. One night, my shift ended early at 4 a.m. By the time I pulled into my neighborhood, it was around 4:15. The suburban streets were dead silent, swallowed by the pre-dawn mist. But as I approached my house, my headlights caught something unusual. A car was parked right against the curb, directly next to my driveway. I slowed down as I passed it. It was an old, black sedan. Every single window was heavily tinted, so dark that it looked pitch black inside. The engine was off and all its lights were dead. My neighborhood has deep spacing between the houses, meaning there are endless open curb spaces to park. Leaving a car right against my property line felt incredibly deliberate. Initially, I tried to rationalize it. I assumed a neighbor was hosting a late party and their guests had spilled over. I parked in my garage, headed inside, and went about my night. An hour later, I checked out the front window. The sedan was gone. The next evening, I got ready for another shift. When I pulled out of the driveway at 6 p.m., the street was clear. I dismissed the incident entirely, but my second shift was exhausting, and by the time I drove home in the dead of night, I was desperate for sleep. As I turned down my street, my stomach dropped. The exact same black sedan was parked in the exact same spot. I slowly rolled past it, staring at the tinted glass. Nothing. I parked in the garage, but this time curiosity and a growing sense of unease got the better of me. I walked down the length of my driveway. The air was freezing. About 10 feet away from the car, I stopped. Just as I did, I caught a sudden flit of movement through the driver's side window out of the corner of my eye. It was just a glimpse, a shifting shadow. Could have been a reflection, but my gut told me otherwise. Not wanting to provoke whoever was inside, I pulled out my phone, quickly snapped a picture of their license plate, and hurried into the house. An hour later, I checked the window. The car had vanished again. The next day was my night off. I slept until sunset. When I woke up around 7 p.m., I went for a long, hour-long walk to clear my head. The street was empty when I left, but when I returned, the black sedan was sitting there under the dim glow of the street lamp. Frustrated and tired of the games, I walked straight up to it. I leaned in, cupped my hands around my eyes against the glass, and peered inside. The car was entirely empty. No keys, no trash, no personal items. Just cold, vacant seats. I went back inside and walked up to my bedroom to grab my phone, which had been charging on the nightstand. When the screen lit up, my breath hitched. I had a missed notification from my home security app. Motion detected. I have 1 camera on the front porch and 3 inside the main rooms of the house. I opened the app and clicked on the saved 60-second clip. For the first 55 seconds, the footage showed nothing but the dark, silent interior of my home. But in the final 5 seconds, something moved. A heavy, rapid shadow darted past the very bottom of the frame. It was only a fraction of a second, but it clearly caught the silhouette of a head and a pair of hunched shoulders. My hands went completely numb. The room in the footage was the exact bedroom I was currently standing in. The silence of the house suddenly became suffocating. I could hear the violent thudding of my own pulse in my ears. I turned around slowly, my eyes frantically darting to the closet, under the bed, into the shadows. They were in the house with me, right now. Panic overtook me. I turned and bolted out of the bedroom door toward the stairs. The moment my feet hit the hallway, I heard a violent rustle from the bedroom behind me. As I threw myself down the stairs, heavy, frantic footsteps began rushing down the upper hallway, chasing me. Whoever it was barely 15 feet behind me. I hit the front door, yanked it open, and sprinted blindly into the dark woods bordering my property. I never looked back. I just ran until the only sound I could hear was my own breathing and the crunching of dead leaves beneath my sneakers. I dialed 911 from behind a thick oak tree. When the police arrived, the sedan was gone, but I gave them the photo of the license plate. It took the police 3 hours to track down the vehicle and arrest the driver. It was a man in his mid-20s. When they showed me his mugshot, his eyes looked completely vacant and deranged. The police later revealed that he had no prior connection to me, but the stalking was highly calculated. His phone contained dozens of photos of my house, including several shots taken through my living room windows at night, capturing me while I watched TV. He also had a detailed log of my work schedule, tracking my exact departure and arrival times for the past 2 weeks. The most disturbing part of the investigation remains unsolved. The police found no signs of forced entry, and my cameras never picked him up entering or leaving. Because he had been watching me for weeks, he likely mapped out the blind spots of every single camera in the house. The only reason he got caught on video was a slight miscalculation while hiding in my bedroom. I moved out the following week. But sometimes, when I'm awake in the middle of the night, I can't help but wonder, how many times had he sat in the dark corners of my room before he finally made that one mistake? This happened about 4 years ago, back when I was driving for Uber to make some extra cash. It was a Tuesday night, and a massive torrential thunderstorm had completely washed out the city. On nights like that, business usually dies. The streets empty out, and you can go hours without a single ride request. Still, I stayed out. I was parked in a desolate, poorly lit supermarket parking lot, watching YouTube videos on my phone and listening to the heavy rain battering my windshield. Just as I was about to give up and drive home, my phone buzzed with a loud notification. Someone had requested a pickup. I tapped the screen. The passenger was a 25-minute drive away from my current location, and their destination was another 20 minutes past that. Usually, when a request comes in from that far away, it means you're the only driver left on the road. Since I had nothing else to do, I accepted the fare and put the car in drive. The journey felt endless. The storm was blinding, reducing my visibility to just a few feet in front of my hood. The GPS guided me away from the city center, deeper into the rural, undeveloped outskirts of the county. I was driving down narrow, unlit 2-lane roads surrounded by nothing but dense walls of pine trees. It felt less like a job and more like I was driving into a void. After 35 minutes of navigating the flooding roads, the GPS chimed. "You have arrived at your destination." I stopped the car. I was at the intersection of 2 country back roads in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There were no houses, no streetlights, and no signs of civilization. Just black fields and howling wind. And more importantly, there was nobody there. I tapped the app to confirm my arrival and waited. A minute passed. I picked up my phone to type a message to the passenger, asking for their exact location. Suddenly, my eyes darted to my rearview mirror. A figure emerged from the pitch-black darkness behind my car. They hadn't walked down the road. It was as if they had materialized directly out of the woods. Before I could even lock the doors, the back door flew open. A man climbed into the back seat and slammed the door shut. He was absolutely drenched, water dripping from his matted hair onto my leather seats. But it was his expression that made my chest tighten. He looked deeply disturbed, his jaw clenched, staring straight ahead with an intense, aggressive aura. "Did you order an Uber?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Instead of a normal reply, he simply muttered my first name in a low, gravelly tone. Confirmed he was the right passenger. I swallowed the lump in my throat, put the car in drive, and started heading toward the destination. The silence inside the car was suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic slapping of the windshield wipers. But something was deeply wrong with how he was sitting. Instead of sitting behind the passenger seat like most riders do, he sat dead center in the middle of the bench. Every time I looked up at my rearview mirror, his face was right there, staring directly back at me. The vibe inside the cabin was predatory. I wanted to ask what he was doing out in the woods during a severe storm, but I was terrified of escalating his erratic behavior. We were driving deeper into uninhabited territory, the trees closing in on the road. Desperate to break the tension, I tried a friendly tone. "So, what brings you out here anyway? Quite a storm tonight." "Huh." I watched his eyes in the mirror. They instantly darted away from mine, looking out the side window. He opened his mouth as if he were about to speak, but then he snapped it shut. He completely ignored me. His breathing became heavier, faster. He was growing incredibly anxious, his eyes shifting between the road ahead and the reflection of my eyes in the mirror. It is a deeply terrifying feeling to be trapped in a moving metal box with a stranger whose intentions you cannot read, especially when your back is turned to them. Then he suddenly spoke. "Drop me off here." I looked out the window. We were surrounded by completely dark fields. "Are you sure? There's nothing out here. Drop me off here," he demanded, his voice dropping into a harsh, threatening register. I didn't argue. I pulled over onto the muddy shoulder and put the car in park. He reached for the door handle to leave, but as he did, his eyes locked onto my phone, which was mounted on the center console with the Uber app wide open. He froze. His hand stayed on the handle, but he hesitated. He looked at my phone, then slowly pulled out his own phone, staring at his screen. In that horrific moment of silence, I realized exactly what was happening inside his head. He had just remembered that the app tracked his GPS, recorded his credit card, and listed his full legal name. Whatever he had planned to do to me in that car, or whatever he had just done out in those woods, it was directly linked to his identity. The sudden realization of his own digital footprint was setting in. I needed to defuse the situation before he decided to eliminate the only witness. "Hey, don't worry about it," I said, forcing a calm, dismissive smile. "I'll just cancel the ride from my end. It won't charge you a dime." I hoped that by offering to cancel it, he would foolishly think his data would be wiped from the system. He glared at me through the mirror, a cold, dead, hateful stare. After a few agonizing seconds of hesitation, he pushed the door open, stepped out into the pouring rain, and vanished into the foggy darkness within seconds. I slammed my foot on the gas and tore down the road, my hands shaking violently on the steering wheel. The moment I reached cell service, I called the police and reported the encounter, giving them his name and the location where I picked him up. A few days went by with total silence from the authorities. Then, I received a phone call from a detective. A young man had gone missing that exact night. He had last been seen near a hiking trail just off the road where I had picked up my passenger. The detective asked for every detail I could remember, but the storm had been so severe that any physical evidence, footprints, or tracks in the mud had been completely washed away by the time the search teams went out. They never found the missing person, and they never located the man I picked up. The account associated with his Uber profile turned out to be registered under a stolen identity. I was the last known person to ever encounter him. And every time it storms, I look at my rearview mirror, knowing how close I came to disappearing into those woods forever. It was an early April evening, and a relentless cold spring rain had been pouring all day. My job requires me to work both indoors and outdoors, so by the time my shift ended at 6 p.m., I was completely soaked, frozen, and exhausted. I drove 30 minutes out to the rural part of town where my house sits isolated on a large plot of land. My driveway is long and unpaved. As I pulled down the path, my headlights illuminated the thick mud, and I noticed something odd. There was a fresh set of tire tracks already carved into the dirt, leading right up to my house and looping back out. I figured it was a mail delivery or a turning truck. But when I reached my porch, there were no packages. The tracks showed that whoever it was had driven all the way down to my house, performed a tight three-point turn, and left. I brushed it off, unlocked the door, stripped out of my wet uniform, and went into the kitchen to make an early dinner. By 7:30 p.m., I was sitting on my living room couch, watching a show and scrolling through my phone. Through the heavy patter of the rain against the glass, I thought I heard a single, muffled knock at the front door. I froze, listening closely. It didn't repeat. Because of the howling wind, I figured my mind was playing tricks on me, but I got up to check anyway. When I opened the heavy wooden door, the cold wind sprayed rain across my face. The porch was entirely empty. I scanned the dark yard for a few seconds before slamming the door shut to keep the weather out. I went back to the couch. My living room layout is a bit exposed. The couch faces the far wall where the TV is, meaning the entire open-concept bottom floor of the house sits directly behind my back. Around an hour later, I got up to use the restroom. As I stepped off the living room rug onto the white tile floor of the hallway, I stopped dead in my tracks. There was a dark, wet smudge of mud on the tile. I stared at it, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I knew for a fact that I hadn't worn my boots past the front mat. I had been in my socks since 6:30 p.m. Furthermore, the muddy footprint was located directly behind the back of my couch, the exact blind spot I had been turning my back to for the last hour. I grabbed a paper towel, wiped the mud away, and tried to convince myself that I must have somehow tracked it in earlier without realizing it. But a primal, evolutionary gut feeling told me I was lying to myself. I went back to the couch, but the comfort was gone. I felt an overwhelming, heavy sensation of being watched. Every shadow in the corner of the room seemed to stretch. The open space behind my back felt like a physical weight. Unable to handle the anxiety, I turned off the TV, grabbed my phone, and walked upstairs to my bedroom. In my bedroom, I could push my back against the headboard, ensuring nothing could sneak up behind me. I turned on the small TV on my dresser and tried to let the background noise soothe me. About 20 minutes passed. I was finally starting to calm down when a sharp, distinct sound cut through the audio of my TV. It came from the hallway right outside my closed bedroom door. A heavy, muted thump, like a shoulder lightly bumping against the drywall, or a heavy footstep stepping on a loose floorboard. My heart flared with heat as adrenaline flooded my system. I slid out of bed, creeping silently toward the door. I pressed my ear against the cold wood. Silence. I stood there for a full minute, gathering every ounce of courage I had, telling myself that if I wanted to sleep tonight, I had to prove the house was empty. I grabbed the handle, yanked the door open, and looked out. The hallway was dark, empty, and perfectly still. The only other room on the second floor was a spare bedroom at the end of the hall, which I used as a small library and home office. I stared at the closed door of the spare room. Suddenly, a deafening blast of sound erupted from downstairs. The main living room TV had just turned on at full volume, blaring the audio of the show I had been watching an hour prior. The sudden noise in the dark house was a violent psychological shock. I didn't think, I just reacted. I sprinted down the hallway, flew down the stairs, and burst into the living room. The downstairs was pitch black, illuminated only by the aggressive, flickering blue light of the television screen casting chaotic shadows on the walls. I scanned the room, my hands raised defensively. Nobody was there. I cautiously stepped up to the entertainment center, reached behind the TV, and hit the manual power button. The house plunged back into total darkness and near absolute silence. Was the TV just glitching? Or was someone actively playing with me? I walked into the kitchen, grabbed the largest chef's knife from the block, and began systematically clearing the house. I should have called the police, but I lived so far out in the rural district that I knew a patrol car would take at least 15 to 20 minutes to reach me. If someone was in the house, I was on my own. I cleared the kitchen, the laundry room, and the closets downstairs. Nothing. Everything was perfectly in place. Breathing a sigh of relief, I convinced myself it was all a series of bizarre electrical coincidences. I walked back up the stairs, holding the knife, intending to check the spare bedroom just to be thorough before locking my bedroom door for the night. I reached the end of the upper hallway and pushed the door to the spare room open. Creaked loudly. I flipped the light switch. The desk, the bookshelves, and the armchair all looked exactly as I had left them weeks ago. But then, my eyes drifted to the floor right next to the closet door. Lying flat on the carpet was the black plastic television remote to the living room TV downstairs. The blood drained from my face so fast I became dizzy. I backed out of the room, turned, and sprinted down the stairs, abandoning the knife on the kitchen counter as I threw open the front door and ran out into the pouring rain. I sprinted all the way to the edge of my property line and dialed 911 from my car, locking the doors. When the police arrived and searched the property, they found the definitive truth. The lock on one of the basement windows had been neatly pried open from the outside. The tire tracks from earlier that afternoon belonged to the intruder. They had driven down my driveway while I was at work, knocking on the door to ensure the house was vacant. When nobody answered, they drove away, parked down the road, walked back through the woods, and broke in through the basement. They had been inside the house the entire evening. While I was sitting on the couch making dinner, they were quietly moving through the dark rooms behind me. And when I finally grew uncomfortable and went upstairs to my bedroom, they had crept downstairs, grabbed the remote, and retreated to the spare bedroom. The realization of the TV remote was the most sinister part. The intruder had heard me leave my bedroom to check the hallway. Realizing I was walking directly toward the spare room where they were hiding, they frantically hit the power button on the remote to turn on the downstairs TV, creating a loud, chaotic distraction to draw me away from the hallway. While I was downstairs searching the living room, they had slipped out of the spare room, ran down the back exit, and disappeared into the rainy night. They didn't steal a single item. No electronics, no cash, no jewelry were missing. To this day, I don't know what their intentions were, or how long they had been standing in the dark right behind my couch, simply watching me.